Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins.
and you're on the air with Power Squared. This week we have Rik Offenberger, the editor in chief of First Comics News, here as a guest. Welcome back to the show. You're on, I think, a while, maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah, well, no, we were on before. I think it was with our first Kickstarter. It might have been the second.
Yeah, and there was a whole gang of you, as I
Yeah, it was
recall.
me and it was Eric and it was Jim.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was fun.
yeah.
Uh,
Jim and Eric are my partners in G-Man Comics.
okay, so we're here to talk about your current Kickstarter with G-Man Comics. So um, let's start with your new Kickstarter, which started yesterday.
Yesterday, we launched yesterday. We publish in quantity. The biggest problem with being an indie publisher on Kickstarter is that they charge you $6 to ship the book. If you paid $10 to buy the comic and then $6 to ship it, it becomes much more expensive.
Right,
And you can actually ship 5 for the same price that you can ship 1 once you put it in the Gemini mailer and you hit that weight level.
right.
And so we thought it would be better to publish them together. And so we do 2 Kickstarters a year. And the idea was that, I mean, we only had 2 books at the beginning and we had a handbook, so we got 3 in a box. And we've gone as high as 11, which was a real stretch for us. This time out, we have 5 comics and a handbook, so
Yeah,
6 total.
I really liked the handbook. To be honest with you, when read that, I mean, because it's all the characters and kind of a little
Yeah.
backstory and everything. I thought that'd be. I wish we had enough characters to really pull that off. So you have stretch goals and add-ons. Do you have a favorite of those?
Well, I mean, my favorite is Join the G-Men. I mean, for me, I always loved comics. I mean, since I was a little kid. When I was 7 years old, my father's buying me comics, and we'd go to Sunday school, and he'd buy me a Slurpee and comics on the way back. He'd read the comics to me. He had collected comics when he was a kid,
Oh, that's cool.
and so I think this gave him an excuse that he was reading them to me when I'm 7, and so he could read them again.
Right.
And I've been in comics my whole life,
Oh, yeah.
and so when I started making my very first comic, I was a retailer, and one of the guys in the shop was drawing the comic, and we were and I was lettering it with my Macintosh. And we were he would do each time he completed a page, I'd letter it, and then I would photocopy it, 8.5 by 11, and we would put it in the box with everyone's pull. So everyone who had a pull list at the store would get a page as we were producing the
Oh,
comic.
that's cool.
And I ended up getting divorced before the comic was ever published. And when I had the store, I think the print run, my minimum print run for that was like 500 books. I think that was the least I could get.
Huh.
And I thought, well, I have the store, and I'm doing conventions every weekend. And we had a local convention we went to twice a week, and I thought I can move 500. And I don't have to move 500 to break even.
Right.
You know what I mean? But I thought I could, if I'm there and I'm selling it and I sign it and I'm meeting people, we could. And my ambition was to publish. And we had another artist working on the second issue, theoretically. And so the idea was that I thought I could publish this in black and white, and I could do that. But it took me 30 years to publish the comic.
Huh.
And so I thought, there are a lot of other people in my position. They created characters they love. They want to publish it. They want them published in a comic. They'd like to see them in print. They'd like to be able to hold that.
Yeah.
They'd like to feel that they got there. And so when you join the G-Men, your character shows up in the book. You don't have to wait all those years.
Huh.
And so the idea with the G-Men is I run it sort of like Mission Impossible. He's a G-Man because he's the old slang for an FBI agent.
Right.
So he's Simon N. Kirby, named after Simon N. Kirby, the agent, because he's an FBI agent.
Right.
And each episode, each book, he picks a team, and just like they did in Mission Impossible. And so some of them are my characters, and some of them are not.
Right.
And the ones that aren't are, it's supposed to be 6 of our backers, and so they pledge to join that, and their character is makes a cameo in the story.
Uh-huh.
They secure a trademark for their character because we published, and their character
Oh, I see.
has appeared in
Yeah,
publication.
right.
Not a registered trademark, but a TM trademark,
Right.
and that's still legal. And then they also appear in the handbook.
That's cool.
And so they work with our production people, and we do a who's who page for them, and then we send them the digital files of the pinup for the character, of the page that it appears in, of the handbook entry. And so then if they publish their own comic later, they can still use the who's who page.
So how much does that cost to do?
That's $150.
$150. Okay. Is that already sold out on this?
Oh yeah, that went in the initially. Sometimes it's the first 5 people as they were waiting for this. The last one who got one was the 20th backer.
Oh, wow.
But that goes really fast because but it also helps us that it goes fast, because we have to leave the spaces blank in the Simon and Kirby book for the backers to be added in.
Right.
And so Gilbert leaves that blank, and then Gilbert works with them. We, out of all the people who pledged that level, we've already gotten in touch with 5 of those 6 people, and they're already working with Gilbert on the design. Some people have things they've sketched out about what their character already looks like, drawings they may have made. There are a variety of different qualities. Right. So, some are not much more than a stick figure. Some are really high quality drawings of what their character looks like, but it's like a static image that they did or someone else did.
Right.
And in some cases, they don't even have that. They just have an idea of what the character would look like.
So how long is it between this and when it will actually appear in a book?
They'll appear in this book, in this Kickstarter.
Okay.
They'll have it in their hands when this book ships, because as soon as Gilbert has the character sheets done, he then adds them into the comic. And that happens during the run of this Kickstarter, during these 28 days. I guess we had 29. This extra day for this year. During the 29 days of February, he'll be busily drawing that in. The rest of the book is complete 100%.
So these characters,
lettered, it's colored, everything's done. He just needs to add those characters in.
So they're not going to actually have any speaking lines or whatever.
No, they'll have a little bit of dialogue.
Okay.
But basically, that usually ends up where we have a situation where the team has to rush in.
Right.
Just like you're reading the X-Men, and the story is mostly about Wolverine, and then all of a sudden Wolverine's overwhelmed, and the rest of the team rushes in and saves. And so, because we don't know what powers we're going to deal with, what the character is going to look like, what scale or size they are, Gilbert leaves those whole pages undone.
Okay.
And so he has a rough sketch, but then he has to start drawing quickly.
Yeah.
Which he's very good at.
Oh, well, that's good.
And I mean, in some cases, we've had 4 comics by Gilbert in the Kickstarter.
Wow.
Gilbert draws Sergeant Flag every month. He's done half of the Simon and Kirby books. He does Invictus for us, and he does his own highlight.
Wow.
And so Invictus isn't in this round. And we've got a special instead of the Sergeant Flag. So he's not doing 4 comics on this particular run, but typically he's doing 4 comics for us.
So what are the 5 books that are part of this?
Okay, so we've got Simon and Kirby the Agent we were talking about, where you could join the G-Men. This time, instead of doing this traditional Sergeant Flag book, we're doing Sergeant Flag meets Tomorrow Girl.
Right.
If you're familiar with Ben Dunn's Tomorrow Girl and Ninja High School. And so with that, we're going to do a crossover into our version of the multiverse, into the Indieverse. Eric Bennett, who is one of the partners at G-Man Comics, did a comic called in the Indieverse, and in his book, he just had profile pages like the Multiverse did for DC, and different independent publishers got to sponsor their characters in the page. And so you had a little handbook for everyone in the independent universe. So we've got 3 different independent universe creators who will make a cameo appearance in there. This isn't the backer thing. We've already got the art done. It's already complete there. And we've got Ben Dunn's character. So basically, our characters are done in standard superhero style. And Ben Dunn's characters are done in manga style because he's in a manga universe.
Right.
And so our characters are chasing after someone who's interdimensional hopping as best they can.
Right.
And literally they bump into Tomorrow Girl and she goes into the next universe with them, separated from two of the other characters who are stranded in her universe. As she's literally just bumped through the hole. And so then we take her, and as they're doing this, they travel through different, parts of the Indieverse. So that's why we have three different, different universes she goes through before she's stuck in ours. And so then as they're trying to get her home, we get to explore different parts of the G-Man universe. And so Jim Burrows writes some of the parts with his characters in it as we go through his attempts to get her home.
Right.
Eric Bennett writes the parts of his universe as his characters are trying to get her home, as we're just trying to get her home and our characters back into our universe.
Wow.
So I thought that would be a lot of fun, and it was a nice crossover. And it was very nice of Ben to let us use Tomorrow Girl.
So this is like 20, these are 20-page comic books?
20-page comic books.
That's a lot of stuff for 20 pages.
Yeah, it's tightly packed.
Oh, yeah, it sounds it.
And so then I've got Lynx, which is a character kind of reminiscent of Catman and Kitten, kind of written like a Batman and Robin type character, where it's a team of two characters.
Right.
Lynx is plural of Lynx is Lynx because it ends in an X.
Right.
I mean, some people say lynxes, but that's not appropriate. And so I've got a male and female team. And I like to deal with that team dynamic with the two of them and how they relate and how, and all that. So I've been doing that for a while. I decided I wanted to touch on this Batman and Robin dynamic a little more. So we introduced two new characters, and she's an 8-year-old girl, just like Robin was an 8-year-old boy when Batman met up with him. And he's a full-grown man. And so we deal with some of that dynamic and the losses he suffered to put him out in the streets in a costume, and the losses she suffered that she would be willing to actually even team up with him.
Right.
And so I thought that also touches on the Batman and Robin dynamic that I'm doing with Lynx in a different way. Because I do that with the Agent and Sergeant Flag too. They're both patriotic characters,
right? But
they come at it from very different reactions. Whereas Sergeant Flag is almost Punisher-like, you know what I mean? All guns blazing and all action, like an Image comic was when they started in the '90s.
Yeah.
And Agent Kirby is more of a Silver Age style, Captain America analog, where it's much more planning and plotting and much more, planned action.
Right.
And reaction. And then we've got an anthology book with a variety of different stories. Atomic Bombshell. Did you ever see that episode of Twilight Zone where the little kid everyone was afraid of?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and so it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
So I thought it would be a fun story to do, and we've been carrying this forward for a while with Atomic Bombshell, where as a child she was a nuclear bomb, just like Captain Atom was. They were always worried he'd explode.
Right.
Okay, so no one tells her no because she's a child who could explode and irradiate everyone to death. And now she's an adult and she's grown up with everyone afraid to tell her no.
Right. Oh, that sounds interesting.
And so we've done some fun things with that. And then we do a cuter, more cartoonish style with Kid Terror and Agent Squires.
Okay.
And Kid Terror and Agent Squires, the old Black Terror character, we decided that he would be black in our story. And so he was Terror Noir. Mm-hmm. And we killed him off. We've killed off a few characters. Oh. And so then we decided, well, what would we do after we killed him off? We have his son who's now fatherless. And he's having to deal with this.
Right.
And so we teamed him up with Agent Squires, who's our character like Agent Coulson from
Yeah, Shield.
Agents of Shields, where he's not a superhero, he's just a guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? When the superheroes show up and beat up the bad guy, he's the guy who deals with the police afterwards as they put them into the squad car. He's the guy who deals with the property owner as they're having to deal with the property damage. He's the one who does all the cleanup work that needs to be done because you just had a major superhero battle.
Right.
And so now his friend's son is now fatherless, and so he's trying to help him out and mentor him. And of course, he thinks he's the mentor, and Kid Terror thinks he's the sidekick.
Right.
Because he's in the costume and the other guy isn't. So,
Oh.
And so we have a little fun with that. And then Eric's doing more with Avalon and Tyrannus and the backstory there. And we've got a continuing story there that's going. And then Tyrannus is crossing over with another character, Try. And that one we're doing as a mini comic. And so it's a digital mini comic. And if we hit if we hit $4,000, everyone gets a copy of the digital comic.
Right.
And if you bought a copy of the anthology comic, we'll add that into print.
Huh.
Because we'll just add it on.
You haven't hit 4,000 yet?
What?
You haven't hit $4,000
yet? No, we're at 2,500 right now as we're speaking, and so it's moving along. But it's a long month. It's a long month, and I got Brad Gorby who to do a cover for me. I always liked his art, and so I had contacted him. And initially, when I contacted him, he said, he was semi-retired. He wasn't going to do some comic covers, and so I left it alone for a little while. And then I talked, but I had talked to him and known him from his other work, and so I thought that I'd keep in touch with him and keep talking to him, and eventually he agreed to do a cover for us.
That's cool.
And so that we're going to do that this time, and I always like to do someone that I have some. If I'm doing covers, I like to have some connection with the person who's doing the cover for me.
Right.
It's not just someone random that I have no connection with whatsoever because they're a nice artist.
Right.
Because you want to support it. If I'm doing this project, it's nice to have something that's a memento from something that's important to me.
Right. No, it makes sense. You want to work with people that you like.
Yeah, and Gilbert is doing his own book in addition to doing our books.
Huh.
So he's doing Highlight. And he has a Facebook page called The Arena, where you sponsor your character in the arena and the characters fight, theoretically. It's on Facebook, so they're not really fighting.
Right.
But there's a poll, and people vote for who's going to win, and they campaign to see why you'd like that person to win, and all that. And people vote, and whoever wins gets a mock cover that Gilbert does with the winners.
Wow.
And so that's where I started working with Gilbert. He was doing mock covers of my characters, and we didn't think we were publishing a comic. What did I know?
Yeah.
and again, we do each campaign we do a supplement to the handbook. So the handbook is all 6 backers. That's going to take up 6 pages, and then as we introduce new characters, the new characters we introduce in the books that we're publishing, those characters get new entries too.
Wow. So it's grown to be, I assume it's quite a little handbook now.
Well, it's just a supplement.
Right.
We had done just just each Kickstarter thing. So this will be our 9th handbook.
Wow.
But at one Kickstarter, we decided that we would collect the first one. We thought, with the second one, we'll just add pages.
Yeah.
And then it seemed like, people who are going to get this are going to feel like they're getting the same pages over and over again. So then we decided that we were going to split it into. We did a backer handbook and a main character handbook, and then the shipping on that was enormous. Because it was thick and it was heavy.
Right. Yeah.
And so we decided that we're just doing supplements going forward. So it's just the new characters from the universe, and if you bought all 9, you're going to get a little bit of duplication there. especially the first one. The first one was the first thing we ever published, and it was never intended that we were going to publish any comics after that. We just were going to publish a handbook.
So, if I'm right, you seem like you write like most of the books, or at least majority of them. At least in this Kickstarter, it seemed like your name was on 3.
In this Kickstarter, I've written the majority of them. Jim and Eric always do some writing too, and they did some writing on the Sergeant Flag book, and and Eric is also writing a chapter in the G-Men United anthology book we're doing. Tyrannus will be back soon, and so will Invictus, and Jim and Eric each write a book.
Right.
But we break up the duties, and it's all a matter of what we like.
I'm just always amazed because I know you do a lot of things, and the fact that you can crank out stories on top of everything else is pretty amazing. So I noticed that you had Rob Liefeld has some covers.
Well, he did a cover for us.
Okay.
The first issue of Sergeant Flag, he did the cover for that.
What was it like working with him?
Oh no, he's a dream to work with. He's really. I mean, it's hard to get on his schedule. Just because when I contacted him, I was going to have him do a cover for the anthology book, because Sergeant Flag was originally in G-Men 3-in-1. 3-in-1 was the three of us, me, Eric, and Jim, each writing one story in an anthology book. So you got 3 different writers with 3 different stories, and I just wanted Rob to do a cover for that. But Rob was booked up forever with the stuff that he had already lined up. And so he said it'd probably be about a year before he could get to me. And a year later, he did. Oh. And when he was ready to do the cover, we were ready to spin Sergeant Flag off into his own book. Okay. We'd gotten good response in the anthology, and so we spun him off into his own book. So Rob ended up doing the cover for the first issue. And so naturally we did the cover, it was one cover, but we did it with the trade dress. We did it Virgin style without the trade dress and none of the logos and anything. Then we did it in black and white the same way.
Right. Okay.
Just the line art.
Well, I'm sure that'll be a big seller for you.
It's been popular. It is, but the trick is always you want the fans to read the book and like the book, as opposed to just collect the book because they wanted the cover,
right? And
then put it in a bag. And I'd like the fans to come back again next Kickstarter and buy it again. And so you always have to. But I've known Rob since he was about 17. We shopped at the same comic book store together. Huh. I saw his stuff as he was just starting on Hawk and the Dove, and he'd done some independent stuff. And so, and we lived in the same general area. When I was little, we were in Anaheim, and right now I'm in my father's house, and he moved here, when I was 7.
Right.
But before that, we lived in Anaheim, and Rob lived in Anaheim, and I'm still not that far away, and so we would shop at the comic shops in Fullerton.
Oh, so you actually you have a personal relationship with him?
Yeah, not that we hang out together or anything like that.
You would know each other on the side.
We're not what I would call friends. We're friendly,
right?
Not that we wouldn't, necessarily. Just we don't travel in the same circles.
Right.
But I really appreciate that he did that for me. It was an unbelievable niceness that he didn't have to do.
Right. So I'm going to ask you, and I think I know the answer: print or digital? What's your preference? For
me, well, it depends on what I'm doing, to tell you the truth. If I'm reading for enjoyment, it has to be print. Okay, but I also do First Comics News.
Right.
And for First Comics News, when I'm doing the news and I'm going to review something someone else did, it's usually easier if it's digital.
Right.
And the reason it's easier if it's digital is because I can read through it on the laptop, and I can clip art if I want to clip art, and I can pull the cover off if I need to pull the cover off, and use it for review or use it for promotions or things like that. So it really depends. If I'm sitting at home reading a comic because I like it, I go to the comic store every Wednesday still. And so if I pick up something that I'm just going to read, it has to be print. I remember when I used to go to the comic store and you'd smell the decaying smell of newsprint. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those were my early memories of getting back issues. Is, you know, that smell of rotting paper.
Yeah.
And so the whole comic experience is kind of visceral to me. You know, holding the comic is part of the joy of it. Just because, you know, it takes you back to all the stuff you saw before. So I like that if it's my own, and not only that, it's kind of collectible. And I keep all my comics, and I put them in bags, and I've got drawer boxes at home, and I've got cabinets in the garage, and I've got long boxes and short boxes, and so you can pick them up, you can take them, you can feel them.
Yeah.
I don't go back to a lot of the digital comics unless I'm looking for something specific.
Well, it's also with you can't get somebody to sign a digital comic, really. You know what I mean?
Once you can, but then you can't really use the laptop after that.
Okay, yes, I guess you could. But I mean, there's something you can show it to somebody and, hey, sign this, as opposed to you know.
Yeah, it takes all the collectability out of the joy of comics. And if you look at what DC and Marvel are doing, you know, well, especially DC, they're like 4 covers for almost every comic.
Mm-hmm.
And Marvel is, you know, sometimes 12, sometimes 2, you know. And you know, and I get DC doesn't back away from that. Sometimes they're 12 there too. But that's all for a collectible market. That's all for people who want print books. No one is buying the digital comic hoping you'll have 12 digital covers stuck in there as pinups.
Yeah, I know.
And so, yeah, I think that's the whole market, is people who really like the paper.
I noticed that you're affiliate with Kablam.
Kablam is our printer.
Right.
Yeah, but Barry Gregory is one of the owners of Kablam, yes. And I met him in San Diego. He was sharing a booth with Steve Butler, who's a buddy of mine. Steve was the one of the artists on Badger early in the 80s that I really liked on Badger. And then when I went to work for Archie Comics, he was doing Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then he did the first new looks for Betty and Veronica. So I got to spend a lot of time talking to him. I talked to him on the phone, we emailed and things like that, and we Facebook all the time. Even now, we continue to Facebook all the time. And so I met Barry through, they were sharing a table together. And Steve was doing the covers for Barry's independent comic. And so that turned out to be really cool. And then Barry now does a column for First Comics News.
Right.
So it all comes, you know, full circle as we all kind of help support each other in all of this.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy with the quality that Kablam puts out. I'm really happy with the way they work with us with some limited editions, with some special covers, you know. And Kablam does all of the part that I really don't want to do, in that they package the book up and ship it off to my customer for me.
Right.
So I don't have to physically box each comic. Yeah. Because it takes everything we've got to do two Kickstarters a year while I maintain a full-time day job, run the comic news website, and maintain some family time.
Yeah, I'll get to that later. All the things you do. Yeah, they've been very nice. Barry and Jenny have been very nice to us.
Yes.
And she's been complimentary when I wasn't expecting her to actually have even looked at what we submitted or whatever. So
yeah, and Tommy too.
I don't know who Tommy is.
Oh, Tommy's the third partner.
Okay.
And he did some headers for our letter page for us once, and some and a backup story, just a one-page backup story, and so that was fun too.
Is he the one that you get the email from saying he's sending you something?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's yes. When they ship, you get an email from Ty.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Then I know who that is. I thought it was just somebody that worked there. You know.
No.
Oh, okay. So he's a partner.
And he's the one who put together the website when you're putting your orders in.
Okay.
So you know, he did all that.
Yeah. And I like how you have a message with them, and not like, you know, have 100 messages going back and forth.
Oh, you can delete the old ones.
I know, but it's just yeah.
Yeah, no, I.
Just like this one. Oh yeah, there it is at the bottom. I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
So you have 52 books. You guys have.
With this Kickstarter, when it goes to press, there will be 52 comics in press.
And how many creators are involved with G-Man?
I think it's approximately 36. I'd have to count because it changes. We get new people every Kickstarter. Enrique joined us. Tio was doing the color on links, and he said, "You got to meet Enrique."
Okay.
Enrique, and so they did the cover, the Sergeant Flag cover for G-Men 3-in-1, and I hadn't seen any of his art before, and so they did that cover for us, and it was an unexpected cover because we were done. We were ready to go. With Kickstarter, we're starting, and he said, and Tia said, we want to do a cover, and so I said, well, we'll throw it in as a bonus cover. And it turned out to be really nice looking. And so then we put him on the Atomic Bombshell story for the next round. And that came out real nice, and we were happy with that. And, really pretty dragon in that, and, all the girls in that. And so this time he's doing the Sergeant Flag story, and he's doing the manga stuff with the manga stuff and the other people's characters from different parts of the other universes. And so, that's working out really nicely. And, it just, I get submissions every day. I mean, including today.
Wow.
You get, once you're actively publishing, people want to show you their samples.
Right.
And so, they range from people who could potentially actually be working for us. And that has happened, to people who who aren't ready.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not to say they'll never be ready.
No, but
they're just not ready yet. And, you look at any artist's early stuff when they're starting out, and there was a point at which, they weren't ready for Marvel, but they were ready for, to do their own thing.
Right.
And we'd like to think we put out something, an equivalent quality to a mid-level Marvel or DC book. I mean, we're not doing the top level, quality, but I'd like to think that we put out something that's akin to that level of quality with the art and the coloring. And
so, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought with G-Man Comics, each creator owns their own work.
That's correct.
And
they're their own characters, yeah.
They're on their characters, and so, and you all exist in kind of the same multiverse, right?
Yeah. What happened was when we all got together, I didn't have a huge backstory for my characters. I had characters I'd created 30 years ago when I was running a comic store and thought I was going to publish my own comics. and I never, and I had characters I'd drawn as a kid and things like that. But I didn't have a whole lot of backstory to them. I didn't have a whole built-out world and universe.
Right.
Jim had been playing superhero role-playing games forever. And if you've ever played these role-playing games, it's a huge universe you built.
Right. And
so he had this enormous universe that he was using. And so we just set it in his universe. And so we changed the... I had originally decided that, the agent would be operating in Capital City, because I didn't want to name an actual city because we weren't going to use actual people.
Right.
Because of, all the stuff that goes with that.
Yeah.
But once Jim was on board and we were using his universe, it became Washington, D.C. We used real names because there was only one fictitious city in his universe.
Yeah.
And so, but it helps because there's a lot of backstory and a lot of depth to it. And his characters are really, well thought out over quite a long time. And while I'm really good with the dialogue and the interaction between the characters, I'm not thinking back to what their parents were and who their grandparents were and how they relate to their city. I mean, like Gotham City is its own character in the comic.
Right.
And Metropolis is, but you don't really think much of Coast City for Green Lantern.
Right.
And my characters are operating more in Coast City than they are
in Gotham.
Gotham or Metropolis.
So if everybody owns their own characters, is it kind of like the NFL and you split the proceeds accordingly? I mean, everybody gets a share.
Well, no. If my characters flow over into Jim's book, it's Jim's book.
I see.
But it's like the early Image stuff. We're doing a guild style like Image did.
Okay.
So if it's if it's Jim's, if Jim decides he doesn't want to play with us anymore, he still gets to take all of his pages and all of his toys. And even though my characters were in his pages of his book, he still can publish his book forever without me.
Okay.
If Eric decides he wants to go and publish his stuff, he can take the stuff where my characters guest starred, and vice versa. And the same thing for the backers. If they it says on the Kickstarter, if your character appears in the book, we have the right to republish this for all eternity. You can republish the handbook page as your character in it for all eternity too.
Right.
We're not infringing. We're not going to do new stories with your character without you.
Right.
We're not taking over your character, but we do want to have the right to reprint our own comics.
Right.
And so it's designed so that you could break it apart if you needed to. But we've been having a good time.
So this Kickstarter is to raise money to finish the books and publish them, and
the Kickstarter's you'd think so, but the Kickstarter is really designed to pay the printer and the artist for the next Kickstarter.
I see.
I've already got 4 scripts already written for the August Kickstarter, and I've already got 2 artists already working ahead.
Okay.
And so the ball, it never stops.
Right.
There's never an end. It just keeps rolling. You know what I mean? So it goes from one Kickstarter to the next Kickstarter to the next Kickstarter. And so if the comic's already funded before we start the Kickstarter for the art, the people are really paying to print their own comic.
Right.
And so once they pay to print their own comic, the rest of the money goes into the next Kickstarter. And so then we know what we can and can't do based on how well the Kickstarter does. If it goes wildly successful, we could publish 50 books. And if it goes really poorly, we publish like a 1 8-page leaflet. Yeah. Eventually we'll stop publishing, we'll go out of business, and the last Kickstarter will be all profit. But at the moment it's just it's just you're self-publishing. You know how this works. It just keeps rolling forward.
Profit has not come up in my vocabulary yet. But
there comes a point at which you say, okay, we're not doing this anymore. That we've done enough. We're 95 years old and no one wants to hear what we have to say anymore. And then as the money still keeps coming in on everything you've done before, and you catch up in it.
Yeah, I'm hoping that someday we actually get money coming in. So you're the editor-in-chief of G-Man Comics. What is that role exactly?
The role is that I kind of organize the teams. Jim is our managing editor, and he does all the production work. And I've got a script editor who works with me, Chris Squires, who is literally Agent Squires in real life, and he was my proofreader at Archie when I was at Archie.
Right.
And so he goes, and he goes over all my scripts after I write them, and gives them a good looking over and makes sure that things are appropriate, and makes suggestions and corrections and all that. But I put together the teams, and it's not like we give Eric someone he doesn't want to work with.
Right.
You know what I mean? Eric picks out who he wants, but I make sure that everything keeps rolling. Do
you review the pages as they're ready, or?
We all review the pages as they're ready.
Okay.
We use Facebook a lot since we're all in different parts of the country and different parts of the world in some cases.
Right.
Most of our artists are, some of them are Americans, but some of them are in the Philippines, some of them are in Brazil, some of them are in Mexico. And so what happens is we start a group chat on Facebook for each comic separately.
Okay.
And so I'll put the script up, or I'll email the script, and then as they're working, they'll put their work up, and so we can see it. We can see this, all of us as a group can see it, and we can make comments, and we can see where there are corrections, and see where we're happy, and make sure everything's going well at each step of the process. And so there are no mysteries. Yeah.
That's got to be really time consuming though for you.
It takes a little bit of time every day, but I'm just living my life, and all of a sudden, my phone flashes, and there's a piece of art. It's pretty, and, and it's nice, and it's nice to see it go,
Yeah.
and that's pretty much how life goes.
Yeah.
And so I see it on my phone, and then when I get to my laptop, I can blow it up to comic book size, and then you say, one of the boot cuffs is red and one of the boot cuffs is blue on Sergeant Flag, and you got them backwards. Can we flip that?
Yeah.
Or no, that guy was left on page 3, in the book earlier. You can't have him in the background on page 7.
Right. Or
but it's not just me. That's me, and it's Eric, and it's Jim, and we're all looking at the stuff all together, trying to back each other up.
There's not too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak.
No, we all get along really nicely.
That's good.
Well, I mean, Jim, Eric, and I get along really nicely. And if we had trouble with an artist, we just don't work with them again. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, because we're the core. You know what I mean? Of the team. Gilbert, we made him the art director because he was literally drawing all the character sheets.
Okay.
And in cases where he's doing, some of the book, and Alan, when Alan was doing, was doing Simon and Kirby the Agent, and then Gilbert was doing the handbook, I needed Gilbert to relay some of the character designs to Alan and make sure that was the same. Not that he's in there telling each artist what to do with each thing. But he's doing all the character design work for us. He's done the first issue of everything that I've done.
Huh.
And help build that and help build the world, and we work together nicely. And I'm real happy with his design work, and so he does a lot of our design work.
Who inspires you?
A lot of people. You know what I mean? The fact that you're doing this is inspirational. I mean, no, seriously, I understand that you say, well, it's not, but you're doing this for 5 years.
Yeah.
And you're doing this with your family. And, that means a lot to me. And and I like to see you, it's not easy. None of this is easy.
No.
And you have to put it together. And the guy who did Sword of Bigfoot, Josh Henneman, if you ever saw that book, he put years of his life into this. He was producing one comic a year. And it's really inspiring to see people put their energy into this and wanting to share it. And it's a lot to really have that drive and want to be able to do that. And there's a lot of adversity in publishing comics. It's not like it's easy.
Oh, yeah.
It's not like everything goes your way, and yet you put your head down and you do it again, and you do it over and over and over again. I mean, that's one of the things I appreciate about Rob is that, there are a lot of people who say negative things, but he puts his head down and he does his art and he's drawing every single day, and people buy it, and it's popular, and that doesn't stop people from saying negative things, and that doesn't stop him from doing what he loves.
Right.
And you and I are facing adversity every day with this stuff, and every day there's a challenge with it, and yet you just keep doing it year after year because you love it.
Yeah, or you're insane, one of the two.
I wouldn't rule that out for any of us. There was a meme I saw about 2 weeks ago, and Eric had shared it too, and it said, teach a man to where the comic book store is and he'll be poor for a day. Teach a man to publish comics and he'll be poor for the rest of his life.
That's very true. I've seen that and totally.
And I thought that was very funny.
Yeah. Sadly, but true. Yes. No, it's you want people. You do this. You want people to read your book, as you were saying. I'm doing this. Hopefully, you'll read it.
Yeah, exactly. It's a labor of love. Your whole goal is that someone will read it and enjoy it.
Yes, and then want to read the next one.
And more than anything else, because if you counted the number of hours you put into this, it is probably the worst investment in your entire life. Yeah. However, the joy that it gives you to actually have your own comic in your hand, that's worth a lot.
No, yeah, it's really cool.
And the stick-to-itiveness to do it, no matter, over and over and over again. That's worth something too. You
Uh,
know, Heroic Publishing's been around for like 27 years, and they're still going. Bill Black did a cover for me, and I'm actually going to put him in one of my comics at some point. Um, and he put me in Femforce number 200. I had a cameo,
huh,
and you know, he's been doing this since '69 when you had to mail order the comics.
right.
And he's been producing his comics month after month after month, decade after decade after decade. You know, and through adversity, through distributors going out of business, leaving him unpaid for the books that they had. You know, and it's still going on. How many? I mean, I understand that, you know, Spawn and Savage Dragon are making it up to numbers
Yeah.
close to Cerebus. You know, passing Cerebus at 300. But he's at 200. How many indie books have made it to 200 monthly issues over? You know, just
Yeah. And the fact he can do it monthly is pretty good too.
yeah. Well, I actually think he's quarterly, but
Okay.
yeah, still
Well,
the idea, which is even harder to get to 200.
yeah, yeah. It's a lot of quarters.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, those things really inspire me. That people are willing to do whatever it takes to get their art out there and share it.
Well, I'm glad we inspired you.
No, you really do.
um,
I,
well, I appreciate you saying that. When we talked at Comic Con, you mentioned that you were able to get one of your books on Diamond, and
no, that hasn't happened yet.
okay,
We're working towards a goal like that, but
right.
we haven't made it there yet.
Okay. Is that kind of um, that's hard to do? I know that.
Well, it's easier to do now than it was in the past, I believe, because I think that now that Marvel and DC aren't there, they're a little more open to more independent comics. But the issue had always been the minimums that you had to hit at Diamond, and it's hard to know if you're going to make it or not initially.
Right.
And in addition to that, you know, you got 3 orders before your first comic really ships, maybe 2.
Right.
You know, 2.5. And so you're certainly got 4 issues out the door before you see the payment on the first one,
Right.
because they got to collect the money from the you know, the retailers have to pay the distributor has to do all their bookkeeping, then they have to send the money to you. And so you have to have enough deep pockets to prime the pump, and we're already priming the pump with Kickstarter, you know, where we sold the first ones and then hope to make enough money to roll it into the second ones. And that's why we started with 2 books, and that's why we're up to 6 now. Is it's worked.
Right.
You know, but you can't. I don't think that we have the wherewithal on our own to prime the pump for Diamond at the same time. And I think the margins at Diamond are a little smaller because the price point's a little lower. And you know, and there's some things with the printing where the printing is a little cheaper too for Diamond, so that you can get to that lower price point. But it's a little different, and we weren't prepared for that without a partner, so we're still working on that.
Right.
Part of that was that we wanted to do something with Antarctic Press, and we were talking to them, and we are now. That's that's Tomorrow Girl in the Sergeant Flag comic. Okay. And so theoretically, at some point, it will see life from Antarctic Press going the opposite direction. You know what I mean? And so that'll be in Diamond at some point in the future. I don't know if they'll do it. You know, I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work out as it works out in the future. I don't know if it'll be part of a trade paperback with Tomorrow Girl and it'll just be a story in it, or if they'll do their own standalone, or how they'll feel about it.
Right.
But that it will see life there in Diamond somehow with that story.
Well, that's the dream, isn't it, to be in every, you know, hopefully have a chance to be in every comic book store.
The dream is to walk into the comic book store on Wednesday, and I still go to the comic store every Wednesday.
Right.
And there is your comic on the shelf.
Yeah.
And the real dream would be to see piles of your comics in everyone's hands as they're walking out to the register, saying, "I need 1 copy for me, and I need a bag and board one." You know. But
yeah. That would.
In real life, I'd just be happy to see a few copies on the shelf.
Have you ever tried to just go into a local comic book store and have them put your stuff up, or?
Oh no, we do that.
Okay.
I go the comic shop I shop in every week. Put our stuff on the shelf. and Jim did the same thing with his, and Eric did the same thing at his comic shop. And so, and we gave them a few back issues too. One time when we gave them the new issues, so if they had, so if someone came in and bought issue 3, they'd still be able to get issue 1 and 2. And so, but that's not quite the same thing as being across the country.
No.
Free comic stores are a little small.
Right. No, but it's nice to actually be able to go to a comic book store and see your stuff.
Yeah. No. I think I took a picture and put it on Facebook when they were on the show, even though it was only one comic store for me. In Jim's comic store, in Jim's comic store, he made a whole poster for the window.
Oh.
And and you can do that. You can take he does production anyway for us, so he did the production and blew it up into a poster size, and then took it to the shop and they put it in the window to help sell the comics that we were doing. And he's a local creator.
So in addition, as we talked at the top of the show, in addition to G-Man, you're also the editor-in-chief of First Comic News.
Yes. I had worked for the Comic Buyer's Guide when there was a Comic Buyer's Guide. You have to be an older fan to know that. And then from there, I worked on Borderline magazine, which was digital. And from there, I went to Silver Bullet, where I was. I wrote there and did interviews and was an editor there. And from Silver Bullet, I went to Newsarama, but I had a lot of interviews that were in the works because it's not like you interview someone over 1 minute and it's all ready. Sometimes there's a whole process and you have to set it up and you
go back and forth.
And you get production art and things aren't ready yet. And so I had some things that were midstream when I started working at Newsarama that were from Silver Bullet. And so they didn't want to use them because they had someone else who's already working there doing the exact same story, different questions, different things, but they were already covering that. And so I talked to the people at Comic Book Resources. And so I worked for Comic Book Resources and Newsarama at the same time for a few years. And at one point, Jen, who was the editor-in-chief over at The Pulse, quit. And so I contacted them and I put a business plan put together, and I told them how I wanted to run The Pulse and leave the things that I was doing and just do The Pulse. And we talked about it for a bit, and then I didn't like the way they had put together the compensation package. And I talked to him about it, but we just couldn't come to an actual understanding. But then I had a whole business plan on how to successfully run a comic book news website. And after I'd put all that much effort into it, I just started First Comics News. And it had actually started earlier with the clipping service I was doing on the Yahoo list server, but it wasn't a full website.
Right.
And so when I started doing First Comics News, I discontinued the clipping service, and that became part of it. And so we do a lot of, press releases as well. And we have a lot of reviewers, and we do some podcasts. And that one is, that's my real way to help promote small press publishers like yourself.
And you've been very nice to us, honestly.
And a lot of other small press publishers, because that was, once in the 80s, once I discovered small press comics, there was no going back. I still read the Marvel and DC comics to this day, but it's just a whole different world. It's a different type of storytelling, the different voices, it's different, different emotions.
I think,
and I'm one of them now.
Yeah, you've joined the indie world. No, I remember going to, I think one of the first panels I went to at a con was your how to get press coverage, and you were very nice. You actually came up and said, "So what do you got?" And I gave you a card, and you said, "I always send you stuff," and you've been very supportive of everything we send you. You put out, and Richard reviews every issue, and
Richard was interesting too, because usually the deal with reviewers in general is most people think, oh, this is going to be a lot of fun. And I'll get a lot of PDFs of a lot of comics, and I'll get them every week, and this will be really cool. But there's a burnout factor in there. So some people do it forever because they just love it.
Mm-hmm.
And other people, when they see that it's somewhere between 50 and 100 PDFs each week, get overwhelmed by the whole process.
Yeah.
And they didn't like the idea of writing a book report when they were in school. And so then as an adult, they're not excited to do a mini book report on the comic.
Right.
Richard was doing a review when I was at Archie. He was one of the people who reviewed the Archie comics on a regular basis.
Oh.
And when I was doing First Comics News, we lost a few reviewers all at once. I think 3 of them all at one time. So I put a little notice, help wanted, as one of the articles. And I said, I'm looking for people who want to do comic reviews. And he contacted me and said, I want to do comic reviews. And I said, well, you're already doing comic reviews on your own stuff. And so we cross post. So he posts them on his stuff and he posts them on ours. And he's been doing them for a long time for us. And, you know, and he covers a lot of stuff. And he has a wide range of interests. So there are a lot of real indie books that you haven't ever seen or heard of before. He was reviewing some. There was a guy who was doing matchbook size comics, and he reviewed like 20 of them.
Wow.
And you know, some of this, and you know, he still reviews the mainstream comics too. And it's just whatever really. And he backs a lot of Kickstarters, and there are a lot of Kickstarter books in there.
Yeah, he's been very. I mean, again, he's you know, he said, yeah, just send me the book and I'll review it, as opposed to like, will you please do? You know?
Yeah. And once he starts, he'll stick with you, so that you know, when you've got the next issue, he's excited to look at the next issue and see what's going on.
Yeah, and I look at however he rates it, and go, well, it's better than last time or whatever. You know, it was it's I do appreciate the support that we do get through First Comic News.
And he does quantity reviews. He's doing a lot of reviews. I mean, he's doing reviews every single day of the week. And a lot of the reviewers, they'll do a review once a week. They'll do a review here and there. But I mean, he really digs into this, and every single day of his life he spends with comics.
Wow.
And so sometimes he might not get a review that day because he's doing an interview with someone.
Right.
And that interview may take more than one day, but there isn't a day he's not working on comics.
Well, it's good if you love doing it. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that in addition to First Comic News and G-Man Comics, you also have a full-time day job too, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, you have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
You work in comics. You understand this.
Yes.
You're lucky if you see a few dollars from the comics,
right.
But you still have to pay the mortgage at home.
Right.
And you know, comics is more than a hobby, but not a lot more than a hobby. I mean, I'm sure Jim Lee gets a nice paycheck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's his job too.
But I mean, you had that whole thing last year with the hashtag Comics Broke Me, where you had people who were complaining they weren't making enough money in comics to pay all their bills.
Right.
But I mean, I live just north of Orange County now, and Devlin Grayson used to shop at Funny Business in Pomona. And she started working for DC. And just as a startup writer, she figured that to quit her day job, she had to be writing 4 comics a month.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you're Mark Waid, you don't have to write 4 a month, but right. I think he does write 4 a month.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. No.
And so, you know, anything in the arts is hard. Right. If you're an actor, you go a lot of time without work. If you're an artist, you know, you have to sell your stuff. And if you're a traditional artist, you know, any field in the arts is always a stretch.
Yeah. Well, my question for you is, when do you sleep? Because you're busy 24/7.
Well, literally, I sleep probably between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Every night.
Yeah. Because you've responded to things I've sent you at like 11 o'clock at night. I was like, wow.
Yeah, no. I try and target midnight as the time to go to sleep, but it's usually closer to 1.
Right.
And then I get up at 5 to get ready to start the day job, because before I start the day job, I've got to cycle through all the news that I got from everyone else in the world since I went to sleep, because and I've got other people posting on First Comics News. It's not just like it's just me.
Right.
But we got a whole crew there, and everyone's posting something at all different times, and we got different people posting news and things like that. But I usually I'm so after I come home from work, it's dinner time. And then I spend some time with, the family. And then, my wife and I like to spend some time together.
Uh-huh.
And then she goes to sleep at some point like a normal human being, and sleeps the normal amount of hours.
Right.
And so then from that point, that's when I start writing.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean, for me, it's after dinner, and after that, then I can actually sit down and do whatever I'm going to do that night. And then sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's, doing posts and things like that. But
exactly.
It's a
Well, when I was in high school, I was working, and then when I was in college, I was working full time and going to college full time.
Wow.
And then after college, I went to law school, and I wasn't able to sleep because I was working full time and I was studying.
So are you a lawyer too?
So then when I was done, I didn't make it through law school.
Okay.
But when I was done with school, I started sleeping 8 hours. And then I thought to myself, why do I need to sleep 8 hours now when I didn't need to sleep 8 hours all these years leading up to it? This is just laziness, all this extra sleep. I'm just fast. It's like pressing the fast forward in your life, and you're losing a third of your life there.
Mm-hmm.
And if I could get by with 4 or 5 hours sleep before, I could still do that. It didn't change just because I finished law school. So that's still now I use those extra 4 hours a day that I had used for sleep intermittently there to run a small business.
I remember I was probably just starting college, and two of my friends, we went to the seminar about how you could, you don't need 8 hours sleep, and you could get by on less. And I think I read somewhere that Hugh Hefner was trying to figure out how you could not have to sleep at all, always be busy and stuff. It was like, there's a part of me that at some point everybody else is asleep and you're just like staying awake. So
I've concluded that 2 hours is not enough sleep.
No.
If I get 2 hours of sleep, I'd rather not sleep at all. I'm better off powering through the day and then just getting more sleep the next day than 2 hours of sleep. Because with 2 hours of sleep, I wake up groggy and I feel like I didn't get enough rest. But 4 hours really does it.
Well, I need at least like a little under 6, but
Yeah. It's the same idea. You're using the extra time where everyone else in the house is asleep and it's quiet to be creative.
Yeah, we're trying to be. All right. Well, I know you. I appreciate your being on the show. And is there any? How do people find G-Man Comics outside of the Kickstarter?
We maintain a website. It's g-man-comics.com. We decided to hyphen the comics because we wanted the hyphen between the G and the man, like we do in the logo.
Right.
So we hyphened the comics too. Now we bought the domain G-Man Comics where it all runs together. It's just forwards to the other one.
Okay.
And then we have a link to the Kickstarter on that page as well. We've got all the Who's Who page entries that we did in the handbooks available on there with the heroes and the villains separated out. We've got all the covers we've ever done. We've got all the creators who worked with us, and if they just did one cover, you can still click on their name and you'll see that one cover that they did for us. And we try and keep track of all, chronicle everything we're doing there.
Okay. Well, again, thanks for taking the time. I know you probably got something you need to go work on. So.
Well, thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate you having me here.
No, I appreciate you being on the show. And hopefully we'll have you back again sometime talking about another Kickstarter.
Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
If you're watching us on YouTube later and you like this, leave a like, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment below if this conversation interested you in G-Man.
Yeah, G-Man. All right, so until next time, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.